Through a miraculous twist of fate, Kelvin was blessed by the gods with a ticket for rebirth into a wondrous new world. The goddess he met was a vision of ultimate beauty, yet sadly, all memories of her would soon slip away. In exchange, Kelvin had to sacrifice all his past life's memories for the skills he'd gain in this otherworldly realm. Upon waking, Kelvin felt utterly lost, unsure of his identity or where he was. Suddenly, a mysterious entity appeared, revealing he was one of the lucky ones drawn to rebirth in this fantastical world. Realizing he'd chosen to trade all his past memories, he felt it was a foolish decision. It introduced him to a world where swords clash in battles and magic lets you soar through the skies. Now, Kelvin had mastered the skills he selected before entering this epic realm. His status screen showed mostly support skills and amazing benefits from leveling up. Kelvin started to feel at ease, ready to endure whatever came next. The status screen guided him to head to the nearest town to register as an adventurer. On the way, Kelvin wondered how this entity could speak so naturally. She introduced herself as Melfina and explained that he had begged her to become his companion. So, Melfina made Kelvin take responsibility for his impulsive choices. Her ability to talk came from the mental bond between a summoner and their follower. Kelvin guessed this was due to some mishap caused by Melfina and another god. Somehow, he had fallen head over heels for Melfina in an instant. For now, he could only hear her voice. Melfina revealed that Kelvin had chosen skills and forced her into a pact with him. Bored with her old job, she had agreed to his wild proposal. While Melfina chatted on, Kelvin sneaked a look at his own reflection in a mirror. Learning she saw his rebirth as a short trip, he demanded she return his lost memories, but without enough skill points, he'd used his memories as the trade-off, so he had no say now. He regretted it deeply, as without those memories, he couldn't understand his past obsession. Melfina kept recounting his sweet flirtations from before, which had even made her heart stir. Kelvin froze in embarrassment as his dark romantic history was exposed. More than anything, he wanted to see Melfina's true form that had captivated him so. Sadly, he lacked the mana to summon her yet. So, she had to wait for him to grow stronger with a fresh confession. But Kelvin vowed that would never happen again. After chatting, they found the Adventurers Guild and went to register. Inside, it was packed with people taking on quests and claiming rewards. When it was Kelvin's turn, Ange handed him a form and offered to help him fill it out. But Kelvin declined, as his language comprehension skill let him understand everything since Rebirth. Ange realized Kelvin planned to list his job as summoner, warning it was an ultra-rare class, with maybe one per nation. If word got out, powerful figures would soon notice him. So, Kelvin changed his job to Earth Mage to enjoy his new life in peace. Soon, Ange brought his E-rank certification and gave a quick overview of the work. The guild takes quests from various places, ranks them, and posts them on the board for adventurers. For now, Kelvin could only take E-rank quests, or one rank above. Failing a quest means a contract penalty, so he couldn't pick anything too high. Complete 10 quests in a row, and he'd rank up as an adventurer. From C rank up there are exams, so Ange advised him to be careful. He should pick beginner-friendly quests, so she suggested a few. She recommended starting with slaying green slimes and trying to form a pact with one. For a beginner summon, it's the most compatible monster. Kelvin wanted to test his skills, so he took the quest right away. He also bought a wooden staff infused with a bit of magic power to carry along. On the road, Kelvin wondered if it was luck, or the forest path that kept him from encountering any monsters. Suddenly he spotted a group of green slimes, and Melfina reminded him to use his appraisal eye to read their info. His appraisal eye was S rank, so he could analyze creatures up to level 100, and items at S rank too. Kelvin realized he couldn't appraise Melfina's level, and worried about how much mana it would take to summon her. More importantly, he needed to figure out how to form a pact with these slimes. Melfina said as long as they agreed, the rest depended on his will and ability. Since they didn't understand his language, he just needed to weaken them first. Then, activate the pact to invite them as allies, and they'd likely accept. Using magic now would finish them off, so Kelvin had to fight barehanded. Underestimating the slimes, he got hit without missing a beat. Faced with their taunting moves, Kelvin itched to use magic to end it. But that would ruin the pact, so he endured their attacks instead. After calming down and analyzing their speed, Kelvin finally struck one down with his staff. Melfina guided him to form the pact by extending his palm. Kelvin felt something leave his body, and Melfina explained it was due to using a large amount of magic power. From now on, the pact would consume half his remaining mana, win or lose. Luckily, the slime agreed, so Melfina congratulated him on a successful pact. Kelvin named the slime Cloto, and hoped it would aid him on his journey ahead. Through their mental link, Kelvin sensed Cloto's pure joy and happiness. With only about 10 mana left, he risked summoning, and luckily, Cloto appeared. Melfina teased Kelvin for making Cloto fight its own kind. Cloto shared that in slime society, the strong absorbing the weak is just normal. So, Kelvin instructed Cloto to remove the slime's cause as proof, and it agreed fully. Then, Kelvin planned to use magic on one and let Cloto handle the rest. He had picked up some basic skills from Melfina, so he could use earth magic. Even with little mana, since they were just slimes, Kelvin knew he could manage. They charged in to take down the slimes. When the moment was right, they swiftly defeated the slimes in a flash. Kelvin noticed Cloto's speed had increased since the pact. Melfina explained that an S-rank summon boosts all stats up to 100. Kelvin was stunned by the overwhelming power of his new slime companion. No wonder summoners are so valued. Melfina clarified that only Kelvin has S-rank summoning right now. Others max out at C or B, with boosts of 10 to 20. As Kelvin pondered, Cloto took down another, helping complete the quest. After the task, Cloto returned to his body to rest. With the reward money, Kelvin no longer worried about food or sleep tonight. Still, he wanted more gold to buy better gear. Melfina advised him not to get greedy and shared ideas for items within his budget. On the way to the inn, Kelvin spotted slaves being sold in a side alley. Suddenly, he thought of buying one to strengthen his team. Among them, a beautiful elf caught many eyes, including Kelvin's. Seeing her plight, he could only smile awkwardly and quietly leave. He'd save her later, once he had the means. Soon, Kelvin found the inn Ange had recommended. For now, he'd rent a room for the night. The innkeeper welcomed him warmly, as Ange had mentioned his great cooking skills, making her laugh. Luckily, she was preparing dinner and invited him to join. Checking his room, Kelvin was disappointed there was no bath. Melfina said only royal castles or mansions have those. As he dreamed of a home with a bath, his growling stomach brought him back to reality. The delicious aroma drew him to the kitchen for dinner. Melfina wanted to taste human food and begged him. Kelvin, get stronger to summon her soon. Seeing the feast before him, Kelvin felt pure joy and forgot all his fatigue. Now, with Melfina and Cloto as his companions, he walked the path of a summoner. Despite the challenges ahead, Kelvin vowed to savor this new life. After taking quests, Kelvin and Cloto leveled up quickly, all thanks to double skill points and growth rates. He gained extra stats and 100 more skill points. From his skill list, Kelvin unlocked the hidden E-rank skill, Ambitious Man. He aimed to reach B rank soon. Cloto also gained the E-rank Absorb skill and was thriving. Seeing Kelvin again, Ange congratulated him on ranking up to E-rank Adventurer. When Kelvin took quests, one rank higher without a party, and Ange was worried. Truth was, Kelvin couldn't form a party without revealing his summoner status. But with reliable Cloto, he didn't need it anymore. Ange knew Kelvin wanted to stay low-key, but his fast ranking drew suspicion that he was a disgraced mage-turned-adventurer. Even Ange had doubts, though Kelvin couldn't explain. She apologized for prying and advised him to be cautious on his next quest. Kelvin assured her he'd run if danger loomed. Ange also reminded him to get better weapons for safety. As usual, while asking Ange for a D-rank quest, a blonde named CA suggested slaying the Dark Spirit Knight. Ange was surprised CA's returned earlier than usual. He was arrogant, boasting about taking a C-rank quest. Knowing Kelvin had ranked up to E, CA's fate congratulations. When Kelvin asked, he introduced himself as a D-rank adventurer. Everyone around knew CA's was actually B-rank but played it down. CA's loved bullying newcomers and asserting dominance. People wondered if they should warn Kelvin about Cass's true nature, but the tension silenced them. CA said his party was going after the Dark Spirit Knight and invited Kelvin along. Ange objected, knowing this one was more dangerous. CA's told her not to worry, as his team would back Kelvin up. Still, Kelvin refused, saying he wouldn't benefit them. He checked and saw Cass's strength rivaled Cloto's. Worse, Cass's nickname was the Human Bully, so he wouldn't let Kelvin go easily. Kelvin challenged them to a race, who defeats the monster first. CA's warned it wasn't something to face alone, but he'd go with his team. Kelvin would go solo but stayed confident, so CA's accepted the challenge. Kelvin suspected CA's would trap him during or after the fight. Due to his level. Due to Cass's skill, Kelvin wanted to test his own growth from ranking up. Ange and others worried for Kelvin and prayed for his safety. Meanwhile, CA's met his subordinate to check Kelvin's info. Jimdo's appraisal eye showed Kelvin had hidden skills above C rank. CA's was curious about what Kelvin was hiding. Giadai, hot-tempered, just wanted to beat Kelvin senseless. CA's advised him to stay calm, as a senior should teach gently. CA's was sly, loving to haze rookies, but who knows who'll come out on top. By evening, when they reached the evil castle, they found the undead monsters already defeated. Spotting Kelvin, CA's guessed he was an earth mage. Jimdo saw through Kelvin's hidden powers from his new gear. Kelvin said beyond that door was the Dark Spirit Knight. CAs and Giadai mocked Kelvin for not fighting it first and waiting for them. Kelvin was confident he'd win. But if anyone interfered, it would be a hassle. Knowing he was their target, Kelvin dropped the act and challenged them to fight together. CAs thought Kelvin was hired by other adventurers or after their bounty. Kelvin didn't know about that, but they confessed they were wanted. Kelvin taunted the bald one, making him charge angrily into his trap. Kelvin used earth magic to turn the ground into bottomless mud, trapping Giadi completely. Kelvin's move was so cleverly executed that even CAs and Jimdo failed to spot it. As Giadi escaped, Kelvin struck with his wind blade, sending Jimdo fleeing in panic. Seeing this, Kelvin quickly summoned Cloto to block Jimdo's path. "Hello, darling. I've been waiting here all along." With Cloto's pursuit, Jimdo had no choice but to retreat to his starting point. A few days earlier, while on a mission, Kelvin noticed Cloto acting strangely. The young hero panicked, thinking it was injured, but Cloto had evolved into a legendary monster on par with the Demon King, the very one that once pushed Giadi's water kingdom to the brink of destruction centuries ago. Back in the present, the weakened Jimdo fell unconscious after just one blow from Cloto. Seizing Kelvin's moment of distraction, Giadi broke free from the mud with a steel punch and offered to handle Cloto for her friend. But underestimating Cloto turned him into the second unfortunate victim in that moment. CAs was left, but after a few flashy sword swings, Cloto proved to be more than just a name. Instead of hunting monsters, this group was preying on new recruits for quick experience points to level up fast. They're as sly as they come, and back home we have plenty like you. For now, Kelvin will let these 3 debts lie before tossing them into prison. You and Cloto will finish off the remaining Dark Spirit Knight. Seeing the opponent's power, Kelvin immediately wanted to recruit him as a teammate, so Kelvin introduced himself as a summoner and proposed a pact with him. To form a pact with him, Jez had never expected to chat with Kelvin, as everyone else who came only wanted to take his life. Jez had shared that he was once human and had only recently become a monster. Jez had guessed it was because he still had regrets in this world. But what those regrets were, he couldn't remember. He even offered Kelvin some candy. Though it was long expired, Jezard didn't expect Kelvin to eat it casually and laugh heartily at his grimaced face. Furious, Kelvin challenged Jezard to a duel, but Jezard just kept chuckling. Melfina reminded Kelvin to ask about the pact, and Jezard said serving a new king was no issue. The key was whether Kelvin had the strength to make him submit. Confident in his skills, Kelvin advised Jezard to go all out in a full battle. Finally, Jezard agreed to an intense showdown with Kelvin. Cloto's surprise attacks from blind spots were all blocked by Jezard, showing his instant situational judgment. Kelvin then used an earth wall to create a smokescreen for Cloto's explosion. Yet Jezard emerged unscathed and even unleashed a deadly sword strike that nearly hit Kelvin. No matter what tricks Kelvin and Cloto tried, Jezard delivered decisive blows that left Kelvin in awe. Next, Kelvin used supergravity to halt Jezard's every move. Unexpectedly, this helped Jezard recall part of his past. Once, Jezard lived in a beautiful, peaceful land. One day, a messenger from the Western continent demanded that the king submit to the Empire J. King Azuka refused, only to face threats in return. Days later, Azuka's kingdom was utterly destroyed. Only Jezard and his daughter survived by luck. Carrying his wife's dying wish, he fled with his daughter to start anew. After enduring harsh conditions for so long, his only family member couldn't survive. The pain of a lost homeland and shattered family kept Jezard from finding peace. Enraged, he shattered the supergravity and charged at Kelvin. Kelvin combined supergravity with Cloto's power and successfully blasted Jezard away. The next day, Kelvin brought Jezard's armor to the Adventurers Guild to confirm the quest's success. Everyone praised him as a dragon rookie for defeating the Dark Spirit Knight and Cass's crew, who had been imprisoned and awaited. By now, the 3 had been locked up, waiting for their execution. Ange explained that this quest was beyond D-rank difficulty, so Kelvin would rank up and receive thanks from the Guildmaster himself. Ange was deeply impressed by Kelvin's abilities, and he felt the same, as the Dark Spirit Knight was a formidable foe. As for Jezard, after signing the pact with Kelvin, he kept teasing Ange as a potential bride for him. Melfina disapproved, reminding him of his promise that she was his only love. Kelvin asked Jezard to stop calling him king, but Jezard refused, leaving Kelvin shaking his head in exasperation. As they walked, Kelvin spotted a sophisticated man standing ahead. After a brief chat, Kelvin realized he was the guildmaster of the Pazu branch. Gio easily identified Kelvin as an otherworlder using his A-rank appraisal skill. Kelvin grew anxious, as his hidden identity had been seen through. Moreover, Gio knew Kelvin was a summoner, making him even more wary. Jezard reminded Kelvin to stay confident, as this man might be a friend, not a foe, speak more naturally, and mention. So, Kelvin spoke more naturally, and brought up knowing about CAs, but letting them run wild. Cass's noble background made it hard for Gio to act. Still, they had been quietly gathering evidence, but Kelvin beat them to it. After Gio promised fair justice, Kelvin urged him to get to the point. Gio expressed his desire to partner with Kelvin, as he had met otherworlders before. They were a group of heroes summoned to the divine kingdom of Damisu. Melfina noted they were the ones she had teleported and offered to explain later if interested. Gio said the Oracle of Jeremisu was granted divine prophecy, foreseeing the Demon King's revival. This could explain why monsters across the continent are growing more aggressive. If the Demon King returns, all heroes must unite to defeat him. Kelvin realized they wanted him to eliminate monsters in place of the heroes. They're currently short on people who can handle B-rank quests like you. So, they promised Kelvin fitting rewards, rank promotions, and access to any quests he desired. Gio guessed Kelvin hid his identity to avoid noble power struggles. Thus, if Kelvin cooperated, Gio assured him full freedom. Knowing Kelvin's skills rivaled an S-rank adventurer, Gio advised him to rise quickly before any force swallows him whole. With such tempting offers, Kelvin had no reason to refuse, and officially partnered with Gio. News of Kelvin becoming a B-rank adventurer spread fast to the innkeeper. To celebrate, she decided to add a special dish to his evening menu. Kia's appearance made the goat god think she was Kia's arrival, made the goat god think she was Kelvin's new interest. Even Melfina accused Kelvin of eyeing other mountains, leaving him with a pounding headache. Over lunch, Melfina shared that recently, the Queen's Kingdom performed a summoning ritual, so she selected young heroes to teleport and fight the Demon King. She assured Kelvin it didn't concern him and advised him to stay out. Kelvin recalled his fierce battle with the horned goat and felt thrilled at the idea of heroes and the Demon King. Kelvin asked Cloto for his previous reward money to buy something important. Then, he requested Kia to prepare an extra meal for dinner and excitedly went to acquire a new slave. Gio teased Kelvin about it, so he explained that his team needed more members to boost their strength. Last time, passing that alley, Kelvin had noticed a girl, so he planned to buy her. Their duel with Rigard was neck and neck, showing Kelvin he must strengthen his forces, as future foes could be even stronger. The person Kelvin targeted was someone who never used skill points. She would become his rear support attacker in battles. Arriving there, Kelvin witnessed a man bursting into flames after touching a slave on the cart. The owner explained that the elf girl carried a curse, making anyone who touched her ignite. Seeing her unused skill points, Kelvin asked Melfina how to lift the curse. She guessed it was the Fire Dragon King's curse, so A-rank white magic could dispel it. Hearing that, Kelvin left and returned in the afternoon to buy the girl. As the owner rambled about the elf's curse, Kelvin tossed him a bag of gold. The owner quickly unlocked the cage for her new master. On the way back, the girl introduced herself as Epin and was deeply grateful for Kelvin taking her in. She shared that she'd been sold as a slave since birth and never knew her parents. Worse, her curse made her feel ashamed and inferior. Kelvin tried to comfort her but dodged quickly, fearing he'd get hurt like others. Yet, Kelvin easily lifted the curse and touched her normally, leaving her in shock. He even removed all her chains and assured her she wouldn't harm anyone anymore. Epin burst into tears at the immense kindness Kelvin showed after her hellish life. It turned out Kelvin had used his remaining skill points to learn A-rank white magic before returning to save her. Afterward, Kelvin took her to the inn for dinner and then introduced her to the innkeeper. But Kia wanted to clean Epin up first before they ate. At first, she was still shy. But when she knew at first she was still shy, but realizing she was no longer a danger, Epin became more open with Kia. So, Kia whisked her inside, leaving Kelvin with an empty stomach. After waiting forever, the innkeeper finally brought Epin back. Kelvin froze for 5 seconds at her stunning appearance, making Epin blush deeply. Regaining composure, Epin promised to work hard for her master and hoped for his care ahead. After dinner, Kelvin introduced Epin to his team and revealed he was a summoner. First, he'd double her skill points and growth rate, leaving the rest of her skill choices to her. For now, everything was going smoothly, except Kelvin had to share a cramped bed. Though he asked Kia for a room with 2 beds, none were available. So, every night Kelvin endured the torment of her adorable presence without realizing it. A month after taking Epin as a teammate, they smoothly completed quests. Epin not only leveled up but also enhanced her archery and eagle-eye skills. After ranking up, she learned sewing too. For instance, the maid outfit she's wearing is her remade and reinforced creation. Kelvin didn't lag behind, picking up blacksmithing despite its flaws. As a newbie, he masterfully combined archery with the Fire Dragon King's blessings. After finishing the quest, they headed to the guild for rewards. Ange announced they'd completed 9 quests in a row, 1 more, and they could take the rank-up exam. Epin was excited, as she'd soon reach A rank. Still, Kelvin felt the last ability test opponent was pitifully outmatched. The proctor kept getting hit by Epin's arrows. Though experienced, Ange discovered a new bakery and invited everyone to go. Epin wanted Kelvin to join but was too shy, so Ange pushed him to go. Kelvin promised to buy pastries with them tomorrow, delighting everyone. Arriving the next day, Kelvin saw the place was mostly for couples. He felt lucky Melfina wasn't there, or she'd chatter endlessly. Not seeing her, Kelvin said she was busy fixing. When Ange arrived, Epin was missing, so Kelvin said she was getting ready and would come later. Ange asked Kelvin to drop the formal speech since they were friends, and he agreed. Then, Epin appeared, looking incredibly cute, stirring Kelvin's heart. Ange cleverly nudged him, snapping Kelvin back to praise Epin's outfit. Ange noted Epin had filled out since last month, proof Kelvin was taking great care of her. During the meal, Epin casually fed Kelvin, earning teases from Ange. This scene caught the eyes of those three, who seethed with envyone with 2 milks, one with none. Kelvin explained they didn't do that often, but Ange insisted on feeding him anyway. Amid the crowd's murmurs, Kelvin suggested they eat first, and he'd take pastries home. Suddenly, an arrogant man kicked their meal aside, irritated by their closeness. He flaunted his status as the third prince of AnimeTáiSinh, acting without restraint, which annoyed Kelvin. They planned to teach Kelvin a lesson, but Tabuja went too far, demanding Epin give herself to him for forgiveness. So, Kelvin struck the 2 guards down instantly, then used gravity to immobilize Tabuja and force him to reveal his Pazu visit's purpose. Tabuja confessed he needed to meet Gio, having heard of a powerful adventurer settling here. Kelvin was surprised a prince like him had such weak guards. Tabuja admitted he was just a puppet prince, so he could only bring them along. That's why Tabuja seeks to recruit powerful adventurers as his loyal followers and forge his own path to glory. Kelvin claimed you're the one he's been searching for, but there's no way I'd stoop to being his subordinate. After dealing with him, Kelvin and Ange head out to enjoy the sweets they missed earlier, savoring every bite. Under Kelvin's cool and heroic protection, Epin feels deeply grateful, and her heart stirs with admiration for him. In the divine kingdom of Dimasu, Colette prays for the goddess Melfina to appear and guide their nation once more. Her wish is granted as Melfina appears and asks about the current state of the heroes. Colette reports that their group grows stronger every day, filling Melfina with pride. So she warns of an evil force rising in the western continent and urges Colette to send the heroes there. Most importantly, they must keep the heroes far from Pazu before she vanishes swiftly. Right after, the hero group arrives to receive their next orders from the oracle Colette. That night, Epin can't sleep and keeps thanking Kelvin for saving her from Tabuja's clutches. Kelvin tells her not to worry and apologizes for making her rest in such a cramped spot. Epin suddenly sits up and asks Kelvin if she has no charm at all. Tears streaming, she confesses her feelings to him, leaving him utterly flustered. Kelvin reassures Epin that she's incredibly charming and unmatched, making her heart soar with joy. Epin hugs Kelvin tightly, and he thinks they need a new room fast before this overwhelms him completely. The next day, everyone gathers to watch the heroes' skills as Epin brings tea to offer them. Though called heroes, Kelvin notes their levels aren't impressively high. Melfina feels a bit disappointed at their slow progress after a full year in this world. At this rate, she wonders if the heroes have what it takes to face the Demon King. In contrast, Kelvin's group grows more formidable, with his forging skills advancing greatly despite some failed attempts. Among his masterpieces are the A-grade Black Shield warship and the cloak he's wearing. Plus, there's the cloak made with Epin's sewing skills, perfect for battles ahead. As the group chats lively, Kia announces that the Adventurers Guild urgently needs Kelvin. Gio has learned of a demon's hideout in a B-grade dungeon. Demons are among the most dangerous races. The strongest ones rival dragons and angels in power. Even sealed, adventurers must tread with extreme caution. Dio debates whether to ask Kelvin for help or call in S-grade adventurers, given the demon's unknown strength. Melfina knows demons have unique traits, so even lower ones start at B-grade. Suddenly, Dio mentions how Prince Taboo got his nose smashed, making Kelvin feel a twinge of unease. Dio says he handled it with great effort and nearly disrupted diplomacy with Togan. In reality, Dio knows Kelvin did it and hints at it, forcing him to take this quest. Truly, experience brings wisdom. With that, the group sets off to Dungeon D and runs into Uzudo again. The old man wonders who Goat is, so he introduces himself as Kelvin's ally here to assist. Now, they're scanning the barriers around to ensure the seal holds against the demon. At their current level, others can only guard from outside while Kelvin's group handles the scouting. Before descending, they create a firelight to guide them through the tunnel. But even after traveling far, they spot no monsters at all. Kelvin senses something off, as there's no sign of life here. Further in, the group discovers a strange room ahead. Kelvin feels two presences inside that room. One is the demon, and the other seems weakened. Kelvin plans to take down the demon first and, if possible, recruit it as a subordinate. Entering, they see a red-haired girl imprisoned there. The demon they thought was sealed casually introduces himself as the high-grade demon Vor. Normally, low-grade demons are B-grade, but this one's high-grade, so Kelvin grows a bit worried. Goat wonders who the red-haired woman is, and Vor laughs wickedly. He reveals she's the daughter of the Demon King. In recent times, she might be the daughter of Demon King Gustav. But no one knows, as Gustav has many enemies and keeps it hidden. In fact, Vor cleared out the monsters to lure them here, because only humans can break the seal. Kelvin thinks Vor wants him to break the chains, but he actually aims to devour them for their power. With that, Vor charges at Goat, but he manages to hold his ground. Vor has an innate skill called evil consumption, letting him steal traits from those he eats. The closer the bond, the greater the effect. Kelvin realizes Vor's plan: eat them to gain human traits. Then, break the seal, and take the girl back as the new Demon King. Even with Kelvin's supergravity on Vor, he moves effortlessly. And Kelvin was wrong. Vor wants to devour Zera too for immense power to become the new Demon King. Facing a foe like Vor for the first time, Kelvin can't contain his thrill. Goat recalls that Kelvin smiled the same way in past fights, as he's a true battle maniac. From his stash, Vor summons a hellish army to clash with them. Still, Kelvin calmly slices through them one by one with his wind blade. Against this horde like the Mongol armies, Goat takes the front line while Kelvin finishes off any that slip through. Vor is thrilled by their strength and seamless teamwork. He sees Kelvin as arrogant and a battle junkie, mocking him the whole time, so Vor declares he'll wipe that smirk away with his terrifying power. The sudden shift makes Goat a bit disoriented. Vor uses smoke to obscure vision, leaving Goat confused. But Kelvin senses Vor tunneling underground for an attack from below. Thanks to Kelvin's warning, Goat blocks Vor's strike and counters. Vor is cunning, striking Kelvin with his tail at the same time. Too bad Kelvin is faster. Though Goat is impressive, he's no match for this monster. Then, Vor attacks Kelvin with his tail, nearly making him his meal. Luckily, Cloto arrives just in time to absorb Vor's magic. Seizing the moment, Kelvin uses Holy Sanctuary to lock one of Vor's arms, earning his respect. But it's only temporary, so before Vor breaks free, Goat charges in again. Goat sneaks a hand behind Kelvin to ambush him. Yet, Kelvin stays calm, still hidden behind Vor. Vor didn't see this coming, thanks to Finn's stealth skill reaching mastery. Finn suddenly unleashes Extreme Flame, turning Vor's other arm into charred meat. Goat seizes the chance to claim one of Vor's arms, delighting Kelvin. With that done, Kelvin calls out. However, the Holy Sanctuary's effect ends, so Kelvin urges everyone to keep their distance from Vor. Vor admits Kelvin is the second one to humble him like this. Still, to Vor, this is nothing, as the real game is just beginning. Right away, Vor transforms his body, so everyone must attack quickly to weaken him. But they're a step too late, so Kelvin tells Goat to unleash all his loyalty skills for an all-out fight. Kelvin orders Goat to use emergency defense to block Vor, or the group will fall apart. Goat tries his best but is completely overpowered by Vor's might. As Vor prepares to finish him, Kelvin intervenes and rallies Goat to rise again. Together, they unleash a barrage on Vor, giving him a real challenge. Next, Cloto bombards him with Kelvin's failed weapons, making it hard for Vor to hold on. Finally, the three unite their forces and successfully defeat Vor. Even injured, Vor risks everything to protect Jera when she's in danger. So, Kelvin asks why Vor lied about devouring Zera when he saves her at all costs. It turns out Vor did it to push Kelvin to fight at full strength. Plus, Demon King Gustav tasked him with guarding Zera for centuries. From her childhood, Vor trained her, and her punches, so he always had to endure. Since Zera couldn't cast magic or punch well, she always lost to Vor. Still, he always encouraged her to train slowly, as demons have long lives. When she thinks of this, Zera feels lonely, trapped in the palace forever. Worse, her father has been away lately, leaving her heartbroken. In truth, Gustav has his own burdens, hiding her identity to keep her safe from enemies. Daily, Vor acts as her guardian and only friend, but those peaceful days end when the heroes discover their hideout. Faced with their massive forces, the castle falls quickly. Vor intends to fight to the last breath, but Gustav orders him to live and protect Zera. If Zera's existence is revealed, not just heroes but other demons will target her. So, Gustav casts a seal only humans can break. As Gustav leaves, a teleport spell activates, sending Zera to a distant land. For centuries, Vor has waited for the heroes to vanish so Zera can rise as the new Demon King. Sadly, he can't wait longer, so he begs Kelvin to make Zera his comrade. Vor sees Kelvin as a powerful summoner with monster allies. Vor believes Zera has awakened from her deep sleep, so breaking the seal will revive her. Kelvin offers to heal Vor if he becomes his subordinate. It's a tempting offer, but Vor's loyalty is only to Gustav. Knowing his time is short, Vor asks Kelvin to grant his request before passing on. Even knowing Zera's identity, Kelvin decides to break the seal. Indeed, she's aware of everything and grieves deeply for her lost loved ones. Afterward, the group heads out and gives Uzudo proof that they defeated the demon. The old man asks who Zera is, and Kelvin lies that she was sealed by the demon and he rescued her. Before that, he used a hair clip to hide her horns and wings as a demon, and it was all prepared by Gustav, as if he foresaw this. Kelvin says Zera's health is poor, so they'll return to town first. Uzudo guesses Goat is exhausted, leaving him stunned. Really, Goat is uncomfortable hiding his body's changes. After the battle, Goat has evolved into the underworld knight from an S-grade dungeon. Even his destroyed shield regenerates, stronger than before. As Goat boasts, Kelvin teases him for shaking like a leaf against Vor earlier. Zera worries her identity will bring trouble to everyone. But with his S-grade concealment skill, Kelvin assures her to trust him and not fret. Zera is still wary of Kelvin for defeating even Vor. He says he's just a regular adventurer with a bit of a battle craze. Since Zera has never left her estate, hearing about town makes her a little nervous. So, everyone encourages Zera, boosting her confidence. Upon arriving, Xera is excited by the town's bustle and asks about everything non-stop. Before, she only saw these things in books, so she can't hold back her emotions now. Since Kelvin must report to the Adventurers Guild, he asks someone to take Zera back to the inn. She doesn't want to be seen as a child, as Zera is actually older. Through this, Kelvin rises to A grade, but he's not thrilled after talking with Dio. The young man returns to the inn and is surprised by the celebration feast everyone prepared. On this occasion, Kelvin learns Ka and Uzudo are a married couple. Zera's arrival makes everyone suspect something romantic between her and Kelvin. Still, the party goes on vibrantly, with everyone collapsing from too much drink. Late at night, Kelvin wakes and notices Zera is gone, so he goes to find her. Meanwhile, Zera reflects on Victor and tells him how beautiful the outside world is. Recalling her childhood, Zera dreamed of vast oceans, and Victor promised to teach her to swim. Now, she's stepped out of her safe zone to make that dream real. So, she hopes her father and Victor watch over her from beyond. After that battle, Kelvin's forging and Zera's sewing skills reach S-grade, so he plans a reveal party for new gear. First, Kelvin lets Zera test the S-grade dark human alloy weapon, and she seems to love it. Kelvin nicknames her the Mad Queen, thrilling her with the epic title. He even used Vor's armor to make it, as Zera believes Victor's spirit strengthens her. Kelvin also crafts a new magic sword like the one Goat once used. Zera wants to see Kelvin's gear, but he plans to keep it secret until the next fight. Right now, Kelvin is utterly exhausted and starving, having buried himself in the crafting workshop for what feels like an eternity. Kelvin suddenly asks what he craves to eat, but to his surprise, the young man goes wild with desire for rice, longing for its delicious, comforting aroma. To keep his promise of taking Sarah on a world adventure, Kelvin decides to join everyone for a trip to Toji-A-D. On the way, Sarah is thrilled at the sight of the river and rushes in to share her excitement with Kelvin. They learn that their destination is a water kingdom with food similar to rice, so Kelvin is eager to head there right away. For some reason, Gio easily agrees to the request. And so, the whole group gets a chance to relax on this journey. Suddenly, Jesset notices that Melfina is absent. Kelvin explains it's due to the nature of her divine work. Specifically, Melfina has to adjust her artificial body, and if all goes well, Kelvin might be able to summon her. Before leaving, Melfina teases Kelvin, warning him to be careful in case he falls for her all over again with a thunderbolt of love. Out of the blue, Sarah jumps in and begs Kelvin to let her go on a boat ride, but he has to promise it for another time. Kelvin playfully joins in to steal the spotlight by asking himself something, making Jesset and Cloto realize why Melfina is so eager to be summoned. All along, Sarah and Kelvin have felt that someone is watching them. Sure enough, after traveling a bit, a bandit group called the Black Wind emerges to block their path. The coachman explains that this gang has recently risen in Toji-A-D. They were supposed to be taken down by A-rank adventurers, but for some reason they're still around. Kelvin sees that these thugs are only level 25 to 30, so he decides to let Sarah handle them. However, she mustn't use her black gold magic, as that would create a terrifying spectacle. The bandits mock her relentlessly when they see only Sarah stepping out of the carriage, but she's quick to send them flying. Even their fierce comrades charging in get beaten mercilessly by Sarah. Even the biggest brute in the group is taken down by Sarah with just one hand, without her breaking a sweat. Kelvin notes that Sarah is at level 75, so these low-level thugs don't stand a chance against her. With that, the Black Wind gang is completely subdued by Sarah, but they still boast that their boss is level 70. Hearing this, Kelvin and Sarah move in to make the green-haired one spill all the details. Before long, the group arrives at the Water Kingdom. Arriving at the Water Kingdom, gazing at the sea, gazing at the vast ocean before them, Sarah can't hold back her emotions and asks Kelvin to teach her how to swim. Even others want to try, but with all the luggage on the carriage, they have to hold off. First, the group heads to the Adventurers Guild branch in Toji-a-D to meet the guildmaster, Mi. She's deeply grateful because Kelvin helped them capture some of the Black Wind gang's ringleaders. Mi mentions that Gio often talks about Kelvin, making someone shiver with unease. Actually, Mi and Gio were fellow adventurers in the same party 20 years ago. He's known as the analyst for always sneaking peeks at others' statuses. Back to the main point, Mi recounts how their old party went to take down the Black Wind, but now they've become it. Kelvin realizes these are the heroes To, Jane and Christoph, who were so famous back then that everyone talked about them. Talked about by everyone. Currently, they're hiding behind their hero facade to kidnap and illegally traffic people. Sarah angrily declares she'll make them pay if she finds out where they are. Mi says the Black Wind is right in Toji-a-D, but the situation isn't that simple. Christoph is worshipped as a hero. If they act rashly, it could harm relations between Toji-a-D and To-Jen. Sarah is eager to deal with them since they now have plenty of evidence. Kelvin reminds Sarah to hold back, though he's not thrilled about facing a level 70 foe either. Still, Kelvin can't ignore it, so he uses telepathic communication with the old coachman. He asks her to sense the remaining members' locations and learns their levels are around 50. Kelvin smirks deviously, as it's time for the hero group to step in. Then, Mi calls the hero group to help her take down the Black Wind bandit hideout. The green-haired one doesn't want Toyu to get involved. As per Melfina's words, they need to head to the Empire as soon as possible. But the young man refuses to turn a blind eye, leading to an argument between them. Before that, Kelvin and Mi already knew the hero group was here. So, she wants them to take down the Black Wind, as AnimeTáiSinh won't dare interfere. But Kelvin won't sit still and decides to handle them himself. Meanwhile, a member of the Black Wind gang arrives at the prison and forces a girl to serve him. Just as Hop is about to commit his vile act, Kelvin's group suddenly appears. Jazak can't stand the sight of Hop and beats him up, then rescues the women there. At the same time, Priscilla is furious because today is her day off, yet Christoph dares to call her here. He tells her that Kana's slave hunting team has been wiped out, leaving her in a panic. If this leaks, other countries won't let it slide, and they might even be abandoned by AnimeTáiSinh. Priscilla urges Ado to do something, but he doesn't care, as he only wants to fight the strong. Chris tells her to stay calm since he's having Hop investigate. Suddenly, Kelvin's group storms in and ambushes the Black Wind, catching them off guard. At first, Priscilla thinks it'll be an exciting battle, but Kelvin has no interest in him, planning to sweep them away quickly to welcome the main course. Right now, Toyu's group is advancing as Kelvin predicted. Nana feels extremely uneasy with no one in sight, because Mi had said A-rank adventurers were here. Toyue asks Suna to use her presence-sensing skill to check for anyone around. After checking, Suna spots a group gathered deep in the tunnel. Mabi also finds the place oddly quiet with no signs of battle. Still, they decide to prioritize finding the kidnapped people first. After searching, the group finds a room, but Suna senses no danger at all. Toyu Jia boldly charges in to support everyone. What hits Toua's eyes is Cloto, so he thinks it's an enemy and prepares to strike. However, Juka steps in to protect Cloto and explains that it's Kelvin's benefactor who saved them. The mother explains that the girl was just rescued by the adventurer group and admires them greatly. To the others' confusion, Toua proudly claims he is the hero from Desamisu. Since the brown-haired girl can talk to Cloto, she learns it's just protecting the kidnapped people. Suddenly, Juka's mother begs Toua to save the adventurer group that just rescued them, because the Black Wind gang's leaders are very strong, making it hard for them to win. With a spirit of chivalry, Toyu Jia fearlessly goes to save them, even knowing the opponent is formidable. When the group arrives, they're met with a heartbreaking scene. The young man might think they are the A-rank adventurers and misunderstands Kelvin's group as the enemies. Everything unfolds as Kelvin planned, so he mocks them as weak adventurers to ignite the hero's fighting spirit. Toyu Jia declares he'll vanquish evil in the name of justice, making Kelvin burst into laughter. He proposes to fight all four of them alone, with the loser obeying any command of the winner. Toyu naturally refuses and wants to fight Kelvin solo. But Sasuna stops Toyu, as she has a gut feeling Kelvin is hiding something, like how Kelvin's cloak harbors immense power, so they must be extra cautious. Hearing this, Toyuji changes his mind and agrees to fight together with the group. His reason is to use his victory rights to make the hero group witnesses. That way, the Black Wind will lose Toji-Sen's support and face punishment. Jazat teases Kelvin, saying only a battle maniac could come up with such a clever plan. Sarah feels down because only Kelvin gets to fight. But what can she do? She's already had her fun earlier. To cheer Sarah up, Kelvin asks her to bring out lunch so they can eat while watching the battle. She doesn't agree with Kelvin fighting alone, as the hero group isn't easy to handle. But Kelvin wants to test his combat strategies against numbers to overcome his weaknesses, and this time he's equipped with the Evil Eater gloves to absorb skills, so he advises them not to worry. On their side, the hero group is extremely annoyed by Kelvin's arrogance and ruthlessness. To get revenge, they all borrow the power of spirits one by one. Toyuda guesses Kelvin is a magic user, so he chooses to close the distance for close combat. Kelvin soars up and counters them with Royal Lance, astonishing Zuna. Nana suddenly unleashes a dragon's breath at Kelvin, but he dodges in time. It turns out Kelvin just used speed-enhancing magic and secretly absorbed Misabi's skill. This is the new ability created from Vor's armor fragment that Kelvin mentioned earlier. It can copy up to 2 skills, but each copy overwrites the previous one. Kelvin is thrilled because he's copied Misabi's parallel thinking skill. Suddenly, Jazat wants to know what Kelvin copied from Zuna, but she won't say. Seeing that, Toyu rushes in to engage Kelvin, letting the sisters heal Misabi. More importantly, Toyu wants to test the opponent's strength. Test the opponent's strength, but just relying on numbers won't guarantee victory over Kelvin. Toyu is confident his swordsmanship surpasses Kelvin's, even if Kelvin mocks him as an amateur swordsman. Toyu sticks close to Kelvin to prevent him from using magic. However, Kelvin still blocks every sword strike from Toyu with his bare hands, leaving everyone in awe. Seeing this, Jazat realizes Kelvin borrowed Zuna's S-rank martial arts skill, making him even more daring. Seeing Toyu in trouble, Zuna rushes in to assist. To evade Zuna's attack, Kelvin cleverly uses the highest earth magic to create an adamant fortress. But that doesn't stop Zuna, as she simply unleashes her iron fist strike to split it in 2. Kelvin surprises Zuna with a sudden attack, but Toyu saves her from defeat. Seeing Toyu injured, Nana hurries to heal him, but he refuses. Toyu says he has a mission to save the world and bring peace, so he'll handle Kelvin himself. With that, Toyu gets slapped by Zuna for always chasing justice without thinking of himself. Zuna recalls that sunny day, when the group was suddenly summoned by the goddess to become heroes. Zuna was extremely anxious, but with everyone by her side, she kept pushing forward. However, Toyu always took on the fighting alone, which the others couldn't accept. Though Toyu is the group's pillar, without teamwork, they can never defeat the Demon King. After Zuna's heartfelt pep talk, the young man realizes he's been too reckless and coordinates with the group against Kelvin. Back in the fight, they blind Kelvin with light spirits. Nana uses ice spirits to restrain Kelvin so Misabi can hit him with a super gravity-like move, restrain Kelvin so Mia can hit him with a move. In this tense moment, Jazat can't sit still. However, Kelvin explodes the ground and turns the tables in an instant. If Toyu and Zuna didn't have the light spirit shield and wind spirit speed boost, they would have been in mortal danger. After that, Kelvin uses white magic to restore his sight and, importantly, emerges without a scratch. Kelvin praises their coordination as quite good, since it made him wince a little. In everyone's shock, Kelvin boasts that he'll never let the game end with his own magic. The young man reminds Nana and Misabi to follow up with attack spells after their restraining magic. Zuna needs to combine her attacks with Heavenly Step, as she's too straightforward. Kelvin wonders when Toyu will finally use his sword, so the young man draws his holy sword, exciting Kelvin. Though Toyu charges ahead recklessly, his teammates don't hold back and unleash their full power. Nana casts the Divine Ice Field, immobilizing Kelvin and blocking his support magic. Misabi decides to settle her grudge with Kelvin here and summons undead wraiths. Zuna teases if Kelvin needs a hand, but he's still managing on his own. Then, Misabi launches a crushing spiral, forcing Kelvin to use his adamant guard to block the damage. Kelvin orders the golems to hold off the hero group for 30 seconds while he creates new magic. Normally, creating magic requires a specific structure and long incantation time. But with the parallel thinking he copied from Misabi, he can do it super fast. Seeing that, Zuna hurriedly slices a golem. However, Kelvin finishes the new structure and shatters Nana's Divine Ice Field. She can't believe how Kelvin knows how to counter it, so he explains it's all analyzed with his appraisal eye. While Nana casually explains the magic, Kelvin already knew the answer. On Zuna's side, she's taken Kelvin's advice and applied it to her attack. However, her speed is still too slow, so she's taken down by Kelvin. Even the undead Wraith's punch controlled by Mizabi is powerful. Too bad it's nothing compared to Zuna's punch. This time, Nana switches to a crystallized ice shield aimed straight at Kelvin. But she gets sealed by the young man's holy domain and hits with a multi-layer shockwave, leaving her unconscious. Kelvin defeated all his teammates, igniting a fierce rage in two that burned with intense fury. The young hero charged recklessly at Kelvin, demanding he use that power to make a real difference in this world. With that, Kelvin finished off TOU and reminded him not to impose that heroic ideal on others instead. Focus on growing stronger yourself. After waking up, TOU tried to attack Kelvin again, but upon seeing Cloto, he realized Kelvin was the adventurer who had saved everyone. Filled with regret for the misunderstanding, TOU learned from Xena that it was all part of Kelvin's clever scheme. TOU understood Kelvin's actions were for the good of the group, so he knelt down and admitted defeat. Kelvin then demanded the heroes face their punishment, a public knee under the bright sky, leaving everyone frozen in awkward stillness. Afterward, the captured victims were safely escorted home by the Adventurers Guild. As for the Black Wind group, they would be hunted down and face the justice they deserved. With the mission done, Kelvin didn't forget to thank me and continued his carefree journey through the lands. Though he called it a vacation, Kelvin unwittingly became a reluctant mentor, training the heroes along the way. TOU kept struggling against the monster's tentacles, forcing Xena to rush in and lend a hand. Yet, the creature's body was so soft and slippery that they couldn't land a solid strike. On top of that, the octopus unleashed electric shocks, so Kelvin warned Nana and Mizabi to stay highly focused. If the front line couldn't retreat in time, they had to freeze the water to create some distance. Xena asked why Kelvin was training them, and he explained they were chosen by Melfina and shared his homeland. Yet, Xena thought Kelvin was just helping them level up for a future rematch. The young hero loved the idea and vowed to make it happen once the group had grown stronger. Finally, they took down the beast and called everyone over for a well-deserved lunch. During the meal, Xena kept rambling about the steel punch philosophy, but TOU and the others were completely baffled. Suddenly, Xena mentioned how the Demon King's influence was making dungeon monsters grow even more powerful. TOU recalled the Oracle mentioning this when they were transported here. Kelvin asked how they'd handle an S-rank dungeon boss if fighting the octopus was already this tough. TOU said their only option was to run, but suddenly, reckless Xena brought the dungeon boss right to them. Kelvin pointed out that fleeing would put nearby villagers or their comrades at risk. So, TOU promised not to charge in blindly but to think of a strategy that would lead the group to victory. Kelvin acknowledged how much the heroes had matured and urged them to hold on to that spirit. With the ship having sailed days ago, the heroes needed to leave before it was too late. Kelvin gave them protective amulets as farewell gifts, leaving TOU deeply grateful. TOU vowed that next time they met, the group would be even stronger than before. Kelvin knew that across the sea lay the Jura Empire, the destroyers of Jazat's homeland. He wondered if challenging Jura now would give them any chance of winning. Jazat shared that journeying with Kelvin had made him strong enough to chase once impossible dreams. So, Kelvin promised they'd tackle that together after facing the strong foes here. A mentioned how great it was that Kelvin's necklaces boosted stats and had hidden effects. Kelvin cheekily retorted that if they didn't use them, it was still better than nothing. Suddenly, Xena rushed in to say Me was calling Kelvin because someone wanted to meet him. Kelvin reminded everyone their original goal was to find Rice. And that moment finally arrived upon stepping in. Kelvin was impressed by the Japanese-style castle ahead. Jazat heard that the first king of TOU Kingdom came from another world like the heroes, likely bringing this unique design. Finn wondered if the king was summoned by an oracle or arrived through some unknown method. Inside, Kelvin noticed the tatami mats and removed his shoes accordingly. This impressed the king, who saw Kelvin as a man of great wisdom. After the greetings, Kelvin learned the king's name was Tsubaki, and he was the first person with that family name Kelvin had met. The young hero was surprised to see cheeky Xena acting so serious for once. What? I'm a princess too, you know, I just don't like being all formal about it. Tsubaki wasn't into rigid ceremonies either, so she allowed the group to speak freely. Since they'd achieved great feats, Tsubaki wanted to publicly celebrate them across the kingdom. But with TOU Gen lurking, they couldn't announce it during such a sensitive time. So, Tsubaki let the group request anything, and Kelvin asked for the right to buy grain from the Water Kingdom. Tsubaki offered things of greater value, but Kelvin declined, as food was their ultimate truth. Tsubaki found Kelvin fascinating. Unlike that greedy hero from TOU General, she said Kelvin could buy as much as he wanted, and if it ran out, just send a letter for free shipments. On top of that, Tsubaki organized a small feast for everyone to enjoy. Amid all the exotic delicacies, what made Kelvin happiest was a steaming bowl of white rice. Eat and enjoy. In all the mountains of gourmet dishes before them, A's group was lost in Japanese flavors. Meanwhile, the booze hounds Jazat and Jazar kept toasting each other endlessly. After eating, they eagerly asked for Japanese recipes, much to Kelvin's delight. Having accepted Tsubaki's invitation, the group stayed a few more days. Continued delivering lunches to Kelvin and had mastered making amazing Japanese dishes. Even Tsubaki couldn't resist her magical cooking and joined Kelvin for meals every day. The queen even tried a beauty trap to lure Kelvin into serving Togaji forever. But Kelvin wisely refused, citing the recent surge of monsters around Pazu. Tsubaki then shifted to inviting him as a companion for her days and nights. Still, he kept his distance and politely declined once more. Even so, the queen said she'd always welcome him if he changed his mind. Tsubaki even granted Kelvin special access to the instant teleport gate back to Pazu. Finn wished Two's group could use it to reach the western continent. However, teleportation required massive magic and approval from both sides, so it wasn't for everyone. Kelvin thought they lacked permission, but Tsubaki explained their adventurer cards had a seal from Guildmaster Rio. Hearing that name, Kelvin felt more stung than eating a chili, realizing the old man had tricked him again. As the gate opened, it was time for everyone to part ways and return to beloved Pazu. Thanks to Ankei's tattling, Mrs. Kia knew Kelvin had caught the queen of Touga's eye, but Kelvin insisted he just wanted to be a free adventurer. Fresh from the long trip, Kelvin gave everyone a day off to relax. The young hero planned to step out, making the landlady suspect he was buying another slave. But what Kelvin craved most was a house, ma'am. True to his word, he bought an entire castle as their base and let everyone pick their rooms. As Zera searched for a room, she hoped to be next to Kelvin's, no matter where it was. Jazat excitedly checked the storage for his training spot, just as Kelvin had mentioned. Cloto preferred the outdoors, so the garden became her territory. Kelvin's first stop was the bath, the main reason he bought the place. He also hired Juka and her mother as servants, as they'd applied earlier. That evening, Kelvin relaxed completely in the bath he'd always dreamed of. Even in that blissful soak, he couldn't help but miss the old inn's bed. As he thought of sleeping, Kelvin realized Melfina had returned. He couldn't hold back and summoned her right away. Sure enough, seeing Melfina made him swallow hard. She was exactly his type. After months of anticipation, Melfina finally tasted his legendary cooking skills. After the meal, Melfina scolded Kelvin for moving without telling her, making her search everywhere. Jazat asked who this beauty was, so Melfina introduced herself to everyone. At first, Melfina worried Shera might dislike her because of the demon king Gustav. But Sera didn't blame her, as that hero wasn't summoned by Melfina. Jazat joked that Kelvin was just adding another to his harem. Yet, Melfina boldly claimed she was his main wife. Finn noticed Kelvin choking and fussed over him, making their bond even more intriguing. Since Melfina was a widely known goddess's name, from now on, everyone would call her Mayo. For successfully summoning Mayo, she gifted Kelvin the Rebirth god's blessing. This would shield him from fatal wounds once a month. Hearing that, Seja wanted to go all out sparring with Kelvin, terrifying him. Mayo added that it also had the power to summon heroes. The next day, Mayo and Seja decided to clash in an intense battle for a light reason. While those two saints dueled fiercely, Kelvin worried if the heroes had reached the western continent yet. At that moment, Zera tapped into Victor's demonic power, so Mayo countered with her angelic might. The fight was nail-biting, ending in a perfect tie. Jazat asked why they were fighting and learned it was over who gets to sleep next to Kelvin. Juka wanted to sleep with her master too, but he told her to wait until she's 18 or he'd be in trouble. After the battle, both headed to the bath to unwind. A asked if they were hurt, and Zera said Kelvin had healed them. Mayo noticed Kelvin was distracted and guessed he was pondering what she'd said earlier. After all, as someone summoned here, Kelvin must have thoughts they couldn't fully grasp. Later, Mayo approached Kelvin to ask what was troubling him, so he questioned why they needed heroes. Mayo explained that the Demon King's appearance in this world was inevitable. Every Demon King generation had unique skills, especially the Heavenly Demon Break. That skill amplified and spread dark intentions, even altering personalities. It could also nullify enemy damage, so only heroes with abnormal powers could counter the Demon King's traits. If so, Kelvin could do it without summoning heroes, but Mayo said even that needed exceptions. Kelvin had no memories, making it easier for him to adapt to this world. Two's group felt more out of place, not just transported but burdened as heroes. Seeing Kelvin's hesitation, Mayo noted summoning transferred living people instantly. Rebirth summoning took souls of the dead and rebuilt their bodies. This method used a lot of mana, so it wasn't ideal for summoning many. It was usually for summoning powerful individuals like Kelvin. You could choose privileges and skills, since rebuilding allowed changes in age and appearance. Mayo reassured Kelvin that he looked the same, as changes cost skill points. Rebirth souls were chosen randomly, so Mayo advised Kelvin to think it over carefully. That night, Kelvin decided on Rebirth summoning to boost their forces and keep his promise to Jezat. It was also a backup in case the heroes couldn't handle the Demon King. He warned Juka and her mother to be careful, as he was about to perform a special summoning. Kelvin planned to let the Reborn live as they wished, and Mayo agreed. First, he had to cancel the summoning and add potions to fully restore his mana. Then, Mayo would use her blessing to handle the rebirth, while Kelvin managed the magic and number. He decided to save 1 mana point and pour the rest into one person quality over quantity. Kelvin quickly began the rebirth process. Mayo would handle the summoning, and Kelvin the magic force and count. The young hero chose to concentrate all remaining mana into one, prioritizing strength. Kelvin swiftly started the rebirth. However, after waiting forever, the other party still hadn't appeared. Mayo guessed they were deciding on skills, so it would take a bit. Suddenly, a thunderclap echoed, and the most anticipated figure finally emerged. Kelvin introduced himself as an adventurer, thrilling the newcomer. The girl was named Gio, which made Kelvin feel a bit worn out since it matched someone's name. Gio said she'd heard about Kelvin from the angel, and could hardly believe she'd been reborn. Summoning Gio here made the girl feel Kelvin explained he had summoned Gio, moving her to tears as she hugged him. Exhausted from the rebirth, Gio fainted, leaving Kelvin stunned that this child was the hero. Mayo assured Kelvin that with all that mana poured in, the summoning was a success, but it left him fainting too. Late at night, Gio suddenly woke up and recalled her past before arriving here. Gio was overjoyed to walk freely and gaze at the starry sky like a dream. Suddenly, Kelvin appeared, saying he was lucky to be reborn like Gio, but the young hero had no memories because he traded them to enhance his skills. Kelvin went on to share his feelings of isolation upon arriving, valuable comrades and fighting together, yet he found valuable comrades and fought alongside them across the lands. Casually, Kelvin bragged that he became an A-rank adventurer in Pazu faster than anyone. Kelvin thought Gio might not like this place, but it turned out to be her lifelong dream. From childhood, Gio was bedridden with illness, unable to go out or even attend school with friends. So, she could only gaze at the world through her window or lose herself in the pages of books. Gion once felt her life was utterly meaningless, but thanks to Kelvin, she's been given a second chance to truly live. That's why she's deeply grateful to Kelvin and longs to stand by his side as a loyal teammate. In this area, people with black hair are rare, so she'll pretend to be Kelvin's half-sister from another mother. Since she was an only child before, suddenly having a brother fills her with joy. Gion quickly came up with countless nicknames and decided to call him Brother Kyo to make it feel close. But it clashes with some grumpy old man's name, so he asked her to change it. So, she told Kelvin to call her John, even though it's not much different from her old name. It turns out Gion used to imagine herself as a story character with that name, so despite Kelvin's mix of helplessness and indulgence, he agreed and welcomed John to this enchanting world. That night, as Kelvin slept, he noticed Sarah lying beside him, since they had agreed to take turns watching over him. Unexpectedly, Mayo also claimed a spot next to Kelvin. On top of that, she kept mumbling in her sleep, while John slept peacefully, in his dreams, yet Kelvin stayed wide awake because of these three. The next day, everyone headed to the dark forest to hunt monsters, exciting John to no end. Kelvin brought Ai and her mother along to help them level up to a certain point. Even though the golems are guarding the villa, he still needs to be cautious for any surprises. Juka was worried since she'd never fought monsters before, so Kelvin reassured them they could just relax at the dungeon entrance. This time, Kelvin will use his experience-sharing skill to distribute points among the team members. In other words, the more monsters they defeat, the faster everyone will reach a level where they can fight together. So, Sarah challenged Jezat and Clotho to a contest of who could take down the most monsters. They'd only gone a short way when everyone leveled up at an astonishing rate. Suddenly, they sensed a shadow wolf approaching. Kelvin told them not to attack yet, knowing John loves dogs and wants to tame it. When the shadow wolf appeared, Kelvin used supergravity to immobilize it and formed a contract. In an instant, the fierce wolf transformed into a playful pet for the kids. Soon after, Ain informed Kelvin that Uzudo's party was heading this way. Kelvin told the group they were enjoying a picnic and asked Uzudo what he was doing here. Since Uzudo's party just got promoted to B rank, they had to hunt the required number of monsters in this forest. Uzudo was surprised to see Kelvin surrounded by such beautiful companions. Kelvin explained that A and her mother are just servants at the villa, not full adventurers. When they saw Mel and John, the men fell into despair, realizing Kelvin's luck was unmatched, and they were just left in the shadows. Before long, Sarah's group returned and mentioned they had seen Uzudo's party pass by. John said if everyone came here to hunt monsters, Sarah casually joined in. Finn used Farsight to scan the area and found no monsters left in the forest, so Kelvin had to apologize to Uzudo with hands clasped. But Uzudo didn't blame him. Instead, he praised Kelvin's group for their extraordinary strength and suggested they try for S-rank exams. While bathing his pet, Kelvin grumbled about that old man Geo not warning him about this. Even though it's a special exam, John is certain Kelvin will pass with ease. As for the Shadow Wolf, John has already named it Alex. After washing it clean, Kelvin instructed Alex to bond with John, as they'll be comrades from now on. Coincidentally, John can communicate with Alex through her friendship skill. Afterward, John continued sword training with Jezat. In her free time, she'd go fishing with Sarah and join feasts with everyone. Time passed, strengthening the bond between John and Alex even more. Even in sleep, they stayed inseparable, making Kelvin and Mayo find them utterly adorable. That evening, as Kelvin prepared for patrol, he saw Sarah and John waiting for him. It turned out she had spotted suspicious figures lurking around the villa and woke him up. Kelvin let Mayo sleep, and Sarah had Jezat watch over A and Juka. With Finn's farsight, Kelvin knew they were just low-level foes, around level 20 to 26 at most. So, Kelvin decided to send John to handle them, to stretch her muscles and test her training. Kelvin wanted John to take down those who crossed the barrier, so he'd pull back the golems at the main gate. John bravely accepted the task, filling Kelvin with pride for his little sister. After that, he sent a clone of Clotho with John to support her. Additionally, he lent John his network of subordinates and an enhanced Mistral sword. With all that preparation, Kelvin trusted John would excel in her first battle. When Kristoff was captured, they learned Kelvin had ties with the heroes group in Desamisu. So, they planned for him to disappear tonight before he became an obstacle to Togen. Ever since arriving, John has been cherished and helped by everyone, so she wants to become the strength of the team. As John fought, Sarah and Kelvin watched her intently from afar. Though John's swordsmanship is still limited, she's destined to master S-rank techniques. This group won't let any intruder near the villa, leaving Sarah a bit disappointed she didn't get to fight. Before long, John had defeated all the enemies, so Kelvin asked Clotho to clean up while he handed them over to the Adventurers Guild. The leader would be dealt with personally by Kelvin, so he'd leave John and Alex for Sarah to handle. Meanwhile, the black-clad figure saw his comrades not return and decided to retreat. Unexpectedly, Kelvin appeared behind him, making him realize Kelvin was the one who took down Kristoff. At that moment, Togen was holding a roundtable conference about Kristoff's issue. The idea of kidnapping slaves came from Chistan, but he slyly shifted all the blame to the incompetent adventurers. Through this incident, the nations of Guan, Jizaji, and Desamisu formed an alliance, putting General Dan Bachistan in charge. Amid the tension, Shucha spoke up to urge them to stop. Though the Emperor denied any connection to Togen, the situation remained tense. One wrong move now could spark a war with the three nations. Chistan wanted to declare war immediately, believing even their combined forces couldn't match them. Sucha said unifying the continent is their grand goal, but now isn't the time. Az agreed to war, having clashed with Guan before, and knowing their soldiers aren't elite. Moreover, Azat's Dragon Rider Corps has a secret weapon he's eager to test. Doan disagreed, leaving the votes tied. So, Sitan proposed inviting General C to join the vote. Thus, Daba had to go fetch C, though the young man despised that creepy figure. Daba announced the king had summoned C to the round table, and he showed clear disgust. But a king's order can't be refused, so he had no choice but to agree. However, before going, C asked Daba to rate if he was truly handsome. Meanwhile, Kelvin's group was crossing the marked forest to reach the Eo village in western Guan. As a half Eo, she felt an immediate sense of familiarity upon arriving. Sarah was puzzled, as Book said the Eo tribe was on the western continent, not the east. Mayo explained that decades ago the Eo tribe migrated from the western forests and now live under Guan's protection. Earlier, Geo mentioned Togen always denied any links to the Black Wind. Still, they've had minor skirmishes with their neighbor, Guan. Geo guessed that with things like this, Togen might launch a war, so Kelvin must stay vigilant. If their statements are true, Kelvin could be their next target. He suddenly remembered a quest from Guan's king for Kelvin, which is the S-rank exam. Jezat and John both admired Kelvin for getting a direct message from a king. Apparently, one condition for S-rank is gaining approval from 2 kings. Kelvin figured Tsubaki had endorsed him, and somehow the news reached King Leon H. Mayo shared that from age 10 he went on adventures and became an S-rank adventurer. John wondered why he didn't protect the village himself and instead asked Kelvin. Based on recent events, Kelvin suspected Togen's involvement in this forest. But no matter who it is, he's not afraid of anyone. Sarah warned Kelvin not to be arrogant, or he might get ambushed. No sooner had she spoken than an arrow flew toward the group. Kelvin quickly presented proof that he was here on King Leon H's orders. Hearing this, village chief Neat apologized for the rudeness. When he saw He was utterly shocked because she was still alive. However, Neat had just mistaken her for someone he knew in the past. Kelvin explained he once suffered the Fire Dragon King's curse and became a slave, so he wanted Neat to tell him about Rumin, as it might reveal Ai's origins. 20 years ago, they lived in peace until the Dragon King's race suddenly attacked. The Fire Dragon King demanded they hand over the Io who insulted him, or he'd burn the forest to ashes. To this day, Neat still doesn't know why the Fire Dragon King was so furious. His rage was so terrifying that it killed over half the village and left Neat without his legs. Only Rumin dared to face the Fire Dragon King and begged him to direct his wrath at her alone to spare the others. The Fire Dragon King said Rumin wasn't the Io he sought, but if she became his wife, he'd forgive the insult and save the village. Rumin agreed and was taken by the Fire Dragon King. But years later, they found Rumin's body deep in the forest. Fearing another attack, the people fled the western continent to this place. Sarah speculated A might be Rumin and the Fire Dragon King's child, but Mayo said half Io can only be born from 2 Ios. Still, Kelvin believed Rumin is definitely A's mother. Ai's mother's past is no longer important, as now she has loving comrades by her side. After reminiscing, Kelvin wanted Neat to get to the main point. According to King Leon H's quest, new monster breeds have been abducting Eos in the forest with their minions. So, the villagers set up barriers to mislead them, but the monsters still found the village's exact location. Now, they've attacked 3 times and are gathering to kidnap more Eos. Even the soldiers sent from Guan were powerless. Everyone rallies to reassure Nezat, promising to shield their village with all their might, filling him with deep gratitude and warmth. Kelvin humbly seeks Nezat's permission to transform the village, ensuring no monsters can ever threaten the people again. Nezat agrees right away, leaving Sarah feeling a mix of pity and playful concern for the monster's fate ahead. That very night, the soldiers stealthily lead a horde of hybrid beasts into the forest, plotting to abduct the villagers in this shadowy scheme. They mocked how everyone had fled in fear before, so now no one dared show themselves. Chistan's plan was to first provide Guan with full information, then clash with their forces to hunt the monsters. The soldiers wondered where Chistan got that necklace that could even control S-rank beings, when suddenly an unknown force attacked, felling them one by one. The leader urgently ordered everyone to hide behind the monsters, as the enemy was attacking from afar. Meanwhile, using the bow Kelvin crafted, they could shoot from anywhere without a sound. He even built a fortress wall around the village with his rampart skill. Thanks to the illusion fog, enemies outside couldn't see clearly. The fortified wall and enchanted water with dark magic made it impossible for any foe to breach. Once preparations were complete, Kelvin's team struck. While the leader was sipping tea and chatting, he received news that Team 4 was wiped out and the company captain was captured. He said the opponents weren't Guan soldiers, but some unknown adventurer party, but they were incredibly strong, even beating B-rank monsters. Now, the commander had no choice but to play his trump card to eliminate all enemies. At that moment, Mayo and John located their base, sending the soldiers fleeing in terror. The commander didn't care and still summoned the giant lord to awaken. Seeing this, Mayo wanted John and Alex to take on that massive foe, but even so, John was confident. She guessed the monster was S-rank equivalent, but even so, John was confident she could win. Right after, John and Alex approached the giant lord together. However, John couldn't strike because her sword shattered upon touching its skin. John was at a disadvantage, but to earn Mayo's approval, she refused to give up. At that moment, John asked Clotho to create a new weapon, and, with Alex, unleashed a triple sword strike against the giant warrior. With the sword Kelvin forged, combined with the holy blade and Alex's fierce attacks, John successfully executed the Wolf Unity triple sword technique, defeating the giant lord. The commander couldn't accept it, and made the giant lord transform, revealing its true form. I was worried for John, but Kelvin stayed calm, knowing she could do it. Facing the ferocious monster without a trace of fear, John boldly climbs onto its body and strikes it down once more with her thunderous sword. With the deed done, John rushes to embrace Tram Mayo, showered in a cascade of heartfelt praises from her. Kelvin beams with pride at John's incredible progress in such a short time, but suddenly an attacker strikes, yet Kelvin swiftly blocks the assault. The moment Kelvin spots his opponent, excitement surges through him, sensing this foe is no ordinary challenger. As a notorious charmer like Cly, he's instantly smitten, his desires igniting at first glance with a spark of playful intrigue. So, he tried to use his enchanting skill, but Kelvin quickly noticed and blocked it. On top of that, Kelvin didn't hesitate to issue a fierce warning, telling that scoundrel to stay away from his woman. Kelvin seized the moment to appraise Cly's hidden skills and discovered he was also a reincarnated being. Cly's concealed A-rank skill was exposed, making him suspect that Kelvin was a reincarnated soul just like him. Kelvin told Ein to head to the protective wall, as he was about to dismantle the watchtower right then. Cly lingered reluctantly, irritating Kelvin so much that he blew him away in an instant. After dismantling the watchtower, Kelvin swiftly created 4 Ospidon spears and hurled them straight at Cly. Even so, Cly blocked them in time and mocked Kelvin, calling him just a background character daring to challenge the true protagonist. Kelvin kept attacking with his spears, but Cly remained calm and proud, boasting that his spiral shield was unbeatable. Kelvin flashed a savage grin, nearly getting struck from behind. In the counter-attack, Kelvin realized even his allies had been enchanted by that villain, but Cly shamelessly claimed it was an honor for them to serve someone as charming as him. While Cly was still bragging, his proud shield was suddenly shattered. Kelvin then summoned 4 soul-bound golems that could act independently and even use skills. Seeing this, Cly sent his beautiful companions to face Kelvin's golems. Before the clash, Kelvin instructed them not to harm the women, as he planned to break the enchantment afterward. With numbers evenly matched, Kelvin now faced Cly directly. What followed was a high-speed battle between 2 unyielding rivals. Cly praised Kelvin and offered him a spot as his loyal servant. Kelvin rejected the offer outright, infuriating Cly into attacking. Kelvin pointed out that Cly was injuring his own teammates, but Cly didn't care, saying there were plenty more to replace them. Cly was surprised that Kelvin valued his comrades' lives so deeply. To Cly, these people meant nothing, as this was a free world unbound by any rules. Cly accused Kelvin of being no better, calling him a battle maniac. Kelvin admitted he was thrilled by power, but he wasn't selfish or repulsive like that blonde-haired fiend. With that, they clashed fiercely once more, and Cly raged as his priceless face was wounded. Enraged, the fool threatened to make Kelvin pay with his S-rank magic. Cly's storm barrier was truly formidable and terrifying, leaving Kelvin in awe. Kelvin asked Cloto to retrieve the S-rank disaster staff, ready to make Cly retreat. Though his scythe of death wasn't perfected, Kelvin vowed to make Cly suffer fully for his crimes. Kelvin was disappointed the attack missed, only taking Cly's legs. Failure means trying again, but suddenly, Chiston appeared and carried him away. Chiston introduced himself as the Beast Army General and the mastermind behind the attack. Kelvin demanded Chiston hand over Cly, but he refused, saying Cly still had value. That teleportation wasn't ordinary summoning, so Kelvin guessed this monster had an intriguing skill. Knowing Kelvin wasn't an easy foe, Chiston quickly retreated, promising to meet again soon. Everyone checked on Kelvin and praised his magic as truly spectacular. The young hero apologized for letting the enemy escape and headed back to the village with Cloto. He then informed Najat that the S-rank monster from 2 Gen and General C had been defeated. Najat ordered a grand feast to celebrate their victory. Ayn wondered about Kelvin calling her his woman, leaving her flushed with embarrassment. Just then, Kelvin returned, catching everyone off guard. Meanwhile, Zira, Mayo and John raced to see who would finish first and earn Kelvin's praise. The 3 were evenly matched, but in the final seconds, John surged ahead to win. Zira was shocked to lose to a kid, but happily congratulated John on a job well done. Even Kelvin praised and took pride in John, filling her with joy. On the other side, Cly awoke and had his legs restored by Chiston for their dark schemes. Since Cly was a reincarnated being, Chiston wanted to use him as an experiment subject. Specifically, to have him absorb 1,344 cursed weapons at once, Chiston would use healing magic to keep Cly alive, turning him into a tool of endless torment, enjoying the feast merrily when. That night, while everyone was joyfully enjoying the feast, Kelvin went up the mountain to gaze at the scenery alone. Finn found Kelvin and asked what was troubling her master. She was just grateful for meeting everyone and vowed to use her strength to protect them all so he wouldn't regret it. Suddenly, Kelvin felt like he'd lost something precious before, but he quickly calmed himself. Finn showed Kelvin her mother's heirloom and felt lucky to be here. Finn asked Kelvin to help her wear it and begged him to let her serve him forever. As they shared a heartfelt moment, everyone suddenly arrived to find Kelvin. Suddenly, a young girl ran up to thank Kelvin for protecting the village. Kelvin didn't recognize her as the Beast King of Guan, Leon, but this was just a false body for her to oversee Kelvin's trial. Leon praised Kelvin for doing an excellent job and fully acknowledged his talents. Leon announced that in 4 days, the S-rank adventurer promotion ceremony would happen, where Kelvin would spar with other S-rank veterans. Hearing this, Kelvin burned with excitement, making Leon laugh at his confidence. Everyone knew Kelvin was a total battle enthusiast, so they just smiled and shook their heads. After everything, the group pressed on to face even stronger foes. And so, the tale of the black-clad summoner comes to a close here. Farewell, and see you all in the next videos. Yeah.